Bob Plass, and I am so thrilled that we've begun with this series, Around a Common Table. We had a very good discussion, a couple of good discussions at Christmas time this year, and I've been missing my clergy friends, and Around a Common Table is designed to have people of all faiths getting together, our religious leaders, to discuss matters that affect all of us, whether we're Muslim, whether we're Christian, whether we're Jewish, whether we're an atheist even. And I am so pleased. I am Bob Plass, your host, and I would love to introduce our guests. We'll start with Mother Nancy Webb Stroud. Mother, tell everybody where you're from and your affiliation.
Hi, I am the rector at the Episcopal Church of the Atonement in Westfield. We're the building that kind of looks like Hogwarts Castle. So
yes.
I am, as rector, that means that I'm kind of in charge of the operations at Atonement, and I am a priest of the Episcopal Church. The Episcopal Church is sort of Protestant and sort of Catholic, so I'm kind of in between. And you can call me Nancy, you can call me Mother Nancy, you can say, hey, you, whatever.
I love it. I love it. And Sheikh. Sheikh is our special new friend at Westfield State. These are chaplains at Westfield State, incidentally. Sheikh, tell us all about yourself.
I'm shaking.
You're shaking.
I'll start from where Nancy ended. You can call me, so you call me Sheikh, and I will, or you can call me Yawar, which is my personal name. As you can see there, it's Mirza Yawar Beg. The first and the last are titles. The middle one is my name, which is Yawar. So you can call me Sheikh Yawar, you can call me Yawar, or like Nancy, so you can say, hey, you, as you like.
Yeah.
Bob and I had this conversation the first time we met. Bob said, well, what am I going to call you? I just say, hey, you.
Yeah.
And then he decided to call me Sheikh. I am the resident scholar at the Islamic Center of Western Massachusetts in West Springfield. So we are actually neighbors of Westfield.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been here now 2 years. I used to live in this area about 20 years ago.
Oh, really?
So this is not a new place to me at all. But then I went away to India and various places and returned again after 20 years. So I've been around, and it's wonderful to be here. And like we were saying, COVID has been a test and a trial, no doubt about that. But I'm very grateful to God, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when COVID came, that I was living first in Summers and then in West Springfield, where I could still go for a walk. I can see birds. I can see. I'm not cooped up in a flat in a city. I mean, that is problematic. I mean, imagine that.
Oh man. Yes.
Yeah, and there are lots of people who are in that situation. In a flat in a city, curfew, can't leave, can't go out of their front door. I mean, I am so grateful that I was never in that situation. I used to go for walks in summers. There are more cows and horses than people. So it's like, all beautiful open country. I used to go for walks and so on, and even West Springfield is very pretty. So
well, I get very stimulated by our conversations on this show and in person, because or when we're talking off camera, and one of my oldest clergy friends, not old in age, but old in times I've known him, is Father Warren Savage, who's not unknown in this area. Father, tell us about who you are and what you do.
Well, as my mom would say, I'm a child of God, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do have this privilege of serving as the director and Catholic chaplain at the Albert and Amelia First Interfaith Center on the campus of Westfield State University. I've been a priest for 42 years in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Springfield. So I'm still learning and still trying to find my way through the contours of ministry. Every day is a learning experience. In my 42 years, I've served as a pastor, headmaster of schools, you know, a teacher at the university, teacher at the Elms College, you name it, multiple positions, multiple jobs. So I have a wealth of experience and
Yeah, and everybody that if I mention your name, they say, I know Father Savage. He's one of my favorite priests of all
don't,
time.
yeah, they're looking for something all the time. You know what I'm saying? They're looking for something. But I want you to know that my greatest joy is just meeting people, you know, from diverse backgrounds. And I think as a clergy person, I think, you know, God gives us opportunity to meet a lot of people, to be engaged in all the vicissitudes of life, as we would say, and to learn from them how to be a better person and a better servant and just a better person. So
Yeah, yeah.
as
This,
everyone else would say, you can call me, you know, hey you, or, you know, Father Warren, or whatever. It's really
well, I
a joy.
struggle with that always when, especially on email, I always like to
Yeah,
say, hi,
yeah,
Bob,
yeah,
hi, James, hi,
yeah,
whoever.
yeah.
And so lately I've been using your title with your first name.
Sure. Yeah.
And
You can call me Shake,
and I could call you Shake.
because
Why not?
I shake too. You can call me Shake. Shake and Warren, you know. Shake
I
and
am the
Warren.
king of the shakes here. Look at, as the oldest person in this panel, I am the king. I'm taking the shakes.
There
I'm
you
gonna
go.
let you have that title, Bob. That's
All
okay.
right.
It's
I
all
got a
good.
vanilla one in the kitchen. I'm
It's
going to
all
drink afterward.
it's
But
all good.
yeah, hey, this is a really blessed time in 2021 this year, because we get to celebrate both the holiday of Easter and the month of Ramadan, together in a sense. And I thought that we also Passover is happened a little earlier this year, but also that has happened as well. And I thought today and in our next show that we would discuss the topic of Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, because I think all of us have questions, because we may know the Christian Mass and the maybe synagogue services, but many of us are unaware of Ramadan, what exactly it is, what it means, etc., etc. And when you have a friend like Sheikh Yawar, you cannot help but want to ask those kinds of questions. And I think the only way that we learn about one another is to ask those questions. So why don't we start by asking you, Ramadan, what is it, Sheikh?
That's it. I'm shaking. Thank you very much, Bob. And it's wonderful to be with you and with Father Warren and with Mother Nancy on this lovely program. I'm honored to be part of this program and to be a colleague with all of you on this. Incidentally, I did an interview with Katrina Kincaid of Channel 22, who I'm sure at least Bob knows and the others probably do as well, a few days ago, and she asked me the same question. She said, how can somebody who's not a Muslim find out about all of these things and find out about Ramadan and how it is and so on and so forth. So I said, well, there are two ways. One is become Muslim and and the other one is that ask a Muslim. This is your choice, whichever you want to do. And I think that is true. And talking about asking questions, I completely agree with you. That's the only way you find out. Having said that, I would also say that ask questions the way that you are asking questions, which is with respect and concern, because that's the right way to get answers, whoever it is, I mean, Ramadan or whatever, is to ask questions, not from a judgmental point of view, judgmental standpoint, not as in challenging, but asking as in genuine inquiry. I think that's the spirit. Now, what is it? Since I'm speaking to clergy, and I'm sure they know this as much as I do, the basic fundamental principle of Islam is the direct connection between God and man, without intermediaries, without anyone in between. There's direct connection between God and man. And Ramadan comes to emphasize that. Ramadan comes like a boot camp or like a recharger to get you connected back if you have lost that connection somewhere. And all of us do lose that connection from time to time, to get us connected back. And that is by reminding ourselves of the most important thing in Islam, which is the actual meaning of the term Islam, which is submission. And submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to God. And submission to Him because of two things. One, because we know who He is. And two, because we love Him because of all that He has given us, all His blessings for us. Understanding, of course, that some blessings don't look like blessings. I mean, they don't come wrapped up in ribbons and so on and so forth. But there is a positive aspect to everything that comes to us from Him. And that is totally, it is blessing. Some, as I said, some we understand, some we don't understand. Now, how do we, Ramadan comes to rekindle that. Now, how do we rekindle that? Is to remind ourselves of who we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be, who is God, to understand that. And the best way to understand that is to look at His own self-introduction, because He introduced Himself. He told us who He is. Not the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be on him, not the explanation of any great scholar, but this is God talking to man. And let me recite for you a couple of ayats, a couple of lines from the Quran, and then tell you the translation of that, if I may do that, Bob. So you get a flavor of that. Now, here in Surah Al-Hashr, which is the 59th surah, the chapter of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. The meaning of this, I decided
Father, or Sheikh, that was calming and so soothing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. What do they call, in the Christian faith, we probably have that's similar, like, Father, I'd say, to a Gregorian chant or something that.
Yeah, it is a chant, but we need the Sheikh to translate what he just chanted for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I mean, we call it recitation. We call it qira'at, recitation, but that's what it is. It's not singing, for example. I mean,
no,
concept. It's different from singing.
Yes.
Okay. What I decided for you, it begins, and this is, like as I said, it is. If you see it's a first-person address, directly God speaking to man. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, had we sent down this Quran on a mountain, you would surely have seen it humbling itself and rending asunder by the awe and majesty of Allah. Such are the examples, the parables, which we put forward to mankind that they may reflect. And then he said, who is Allah? He said, He is Allah. Who Allah? He is Allah, other than whom there is nobody worthy of worship. The all-knower, the unseen of the unseen and the seen, the all-knower of the unperceivable and the perceivable. He is the most beneficent and the most merciful. So after introducing himself with his personal name, which is Allah, he introduces himself with two of his attributes, and both of them are mercy, the most beneficent and the most merciful. And then he says again, he is Allah, other than whom there is la ilaha illahu, none has the right to be worshipped but him. And then he introduces himself with other attributes and other qualities and other names. The King, the Holy, the one free from all defects, the giver of security, the watcher over his creatures, the Almighty, the Compeller, the Supreme. Glory be to Allah above all that they associate as partners with him. And then he says, he is Allah, the Creator, the inventor of all things, the bestower of forms. To him belong the best names. All that is in the heavens and the earth, glorify him. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. Now, this is the introduction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the introduction of God as spoken by him. This is our belief in Islam, that the Quran is the actual revealed word of God. This is God speaking to man, and it was preserved in several different ways, and it has come to us exactly as it was revealed on the day it was revealed. I mean, not a day, it was revealed over a period of 23 years, but revealed as it was revealed. So this is what Ramadan comes to reinforce this. How does it reinforce that? It reinforces that by the tool of fasting. So fasting is not to lose weight and so on and so forth. Fasting is to reinforce who Allah is. Now, how does it do that? It does that by prohibiting us from using things which are normally permissible during a specific period of time. So from dawn to dusk, we are not allowed to eat or drink or to have sexual relations. Now, all three of which are permissible in Islam. So it's not that you're not allowed to eat pork, because you're not allowed to eat pork anyway. We are not allowed to eat something which was normally permissible. We are not allowed to drink. It's not that we are not allowed to drink alcohol, because that we are not allowed to drink anyway. Here we are not allowed to drink anything which is even permissible. And so also with relationships with our spouses. So the point here is that if you ask me and say, explain to me logically why we should do that. You know, the logic of that is because God said so. That is the logic. The logic is not the health benefit of it and so on and so on and so on. All of that, one can say, okay, this is a bonus, right? This also happens. But is that the reason why a Muslim is fasting? No. The reason why a Muslim fasts is because to reiterate and emphasize for himself and herself his connection with God, with connection with Allah. And what is that connection? That connection is between the Creator and the creature. It's a connection between the one who loves him the most, and therefore he loves him the most. Now, incidentally, for those of, talking to you guys is like I'm preaching to the choir kind of me. I mean, you know all this stuff anyway. But others who will listen to that, sometimes people ask this question: why do you always say he? Why can't it be a she? Now, the very simple answer to that is linguistic. It has nothing to do with gender. And the linguistic answer is that in the Semitic language, which is Hebrew, which is Arabic, which is Turkish, which is Urdu, which is Farsi, everything has what is called a Semitic gender. That is semantic gender. So, for example, this cap of mine in Urdu is female. Now, that's why it's sitting on my head. I mean, if you think about that, right? So it has a semantic gender. It's female, right? My glasses have a semantic gender. My shirt, my kurta has a semantic gender. And therefore, the word God, the word Allah has a semantic gender, which is he. If you say, well, is God male or female? Well, God is neither male nor female. We believe in Islam that God is unlike anything in creation in any way. He does not resemble anything in creation. Laisa kamithlihi shay'un. He does not resemble anything in creation. God is God, creation is creation. They're not two different things, but God created the creation and he is separate from the creation. So therefore, to reiterate and reinforce this and to reinforce the principle of submission, we have fasting. Now, when we are fasting, therefore, we are reminded of the fact that one, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we do that because of who he is, his glory and majesty, and because of what he gave us. And that is where even the fasting, as far as the food and the drink and so on and so forth, the fact that we are deprived from it for a period of time, like everything else, when you miss something, when you don't have something, you miss it. So when you are missing it now, you become even more conscious of it and say, you know what, I have this, I can still, in this case, it's not taken away, but you are restricting yourself from it for a period of time to reinforce the fact that, alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks be to him, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he gave us food, he gave us drink, he gave us relationships, he gave us families, he gave us all of this beauty, and therefore we need to thank him for it. And this is the basic fundamental reason for Ramadan, which is to connect the person to his creator and to instill and inculcate and remind and to revive in ourselves a spirit of the love of God and of being thankful to him for all that he has blessed us with. And that's the long answer to your short question.
Yeah, mother and father. Geez, that sounded really. Mom.
G-Bob, definitely call me Nancy, please.
Yes.
He said that deliberately, believe me.
It didn't work. Oh my gosh. Mother Nancy. And Father Warren. Respond to that as you heard Sheikh Yawar so succinctly and brilliantly tell us what Ramadan, and which incidentally this year it's celebrated from is it April to May? What are the dates?
Yes, roughly from we started on the 12th of April, and it'll go on for a month. So it's probably 12th or 13th of May. I'm saying probably because it's a lunar month, so it depends on the sighting of the moon. And so the last days, we won't know until the last moments. But
yeah, it will change from year to year. So, Mother Nancy and Father Warren, respond to our wonderful friend.
Okay, Warren, you're up.
Oh, you're going to pass to me?
You're going first. I'm going to bat cleanup.
Oh, okay. What is interesting is that the essence of what Sheikh explained about Ramadan is also the essence of what we do in our Christian tradition during Lent, because we have this threefold discipline of fasting, prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And I think similar to what Sheikh explained, but the basic reason for Lent is to, again, rekindle our relationship with God and with our neighbor, because the neighbor is a reflection of God, because every person is made in the image and likeness of God. So you can't say you love God and hate your neighbor.
Right.
They're conjoined. So Lent is this time of reconnecting, reestablishing, renewing one's relationship with God and one's neighbor. And that's done through these beautiful disciplines of fasting, not so much giving up sweets and food or whatever, but fasting from those things, those tendencies that would disrupt one's relationship with God and ignore one's relationship with one's neighbor. Prayer is an act of love because we pray for one another during Lent. We also pray to God to bring relief, to bring comfort, to bring compassion, to bring peace and forgiveness in situations that are lacking compassion, peace, and forgiveness. But we also exercise this extraordinary love of God neighbor by reaching out to others through some act of charity. This expression of loving my neighbor is only going to be made complete when I actually do something concrete for my neighbor. It's not enough just to say I love my neighbor. You have to demonstrate some form of action, and it's translated as an act of charity or an act of mercy. And we have in our Christian tradition, Mother Nancy will know this, We have these beautiful examples of corporal works of mercy, where you feed the hungry, you clothe the naked, you shelter the homeless, you visit the imprisoned, you visit the sick, you welcome the strangers. So these are acts of mercy, acts of compassion. So what the Sheikh said is, I mean, if you took the Muslim adjective away, it would be Christian, it would be Jewish as well, because these are the same principles, the same actions that are demonstrated in all the major traditions, all the major religions, with the intent to show one's deep love and respect for God and for neighbors. So it always comes down, at least in the Christian tradition, to two fundamental relationships, God and neighbor.
Yep.
And that holds, that's the essence of your faith, to love God and to love your neighbor. And I feel that people often miss the simplicity of faith, because sometimes we can, not that this is what Sheikh's doing, we can over explain, over theologize, over philosophize, and forget that God simply asks you to love God and love your neighbor. That's it.
Yeah. That's, I think you're exactly right, Warren. The other thing that I noticed, although I really do want to talk about the feminist part you got into, Sheikh, but let's leave that aside for a minute, because the concept that came to me actually as both of you were speaking is the juxtaposition of the presence of God and the absence of God. And that is so present in all of our Easter celebrations, because the first thing that was written down about Easter was Jesus died and was put in the tomb, and then a group of women went to the tomb and found that it was empty. So there is an absence at the heart of the presence of God. So Jesus in the Christian tradition is the presence of God made human flesh. Jesus is how we understand who God is and how God operates. But our greatest festival, the most important thing we celebrate, is that one morning his body wasn't there anymore. And then we spend a whole season, Easter's not just one day with the basket and the bunny and the chocolate eggs. Easter is a 50-day season of the celebration of the presence of God in our lives. And the very first story about it is God's absence. And then we have all these wonderful appearances of Jesus in his risen state. And the first thing is, people don't recognize who he is, because we don't know why. He shows them the wounds in his hands and the wounds in his feet, and then we recognize that is who Jesus is. So it was really fascinating to me, Sheikh, to hear you talk about Ramadan as getting connected with God, because you have recognized God's absence in your life, but it's not because God's absent, it's because you haven't recognized who God is. So Ramadan helps you rekindle that relationship, right? Did I get that right? Did I hear you correctly?
Then absolutely, you're right. And I want to reiterate that, as well as what Father Warren said about the commonality in the three traditions: the Jewish, the Christian, and the Muslim. There's actually an ayat in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun." Allah said, fasting has been prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may become conscious of God and concerned about his pleasure. And who are the people for whom it was prescribed before the Muslims? Was the Christians and the Jews. Yeah. So fasting is something which is, and of course it's also, fasting is common also to other traditions. I mean, the Hindus have it, the Baha'is have it, it's a very well-known, respected, and I think appreciated what do you want to call it, with custom or whatever. But point is that
spiritual discipline, spiritual practice.
Yeah, spiritual discipline. And
is it meant because when you're very hungry or you're very thirsty, it helps to focus in a way. I mean, it brings you all of this out here sort of becomes something else, and you focus this way. You focus inward, I think.
I
And
think,
is
I
it,
think,
or am I, have I got the wrong idea here?
no,
Well,
no,
I
but
mean,
I
the sense of-
think the basic, what Sheikh was talking about, it's not that I give up all these pleasures, is that our most basic hunger has to be
Oh.
the hunger for God.
Yeah.
Our most basic fundamental, this hungering for a relationship with God. All other hungers pale in the face of this most basic hunger. Or as Mother Nancy would say, when something is absent, I really become hungry for what is absent. You know, so it's implied that God wants us to hunger and thirst for God's self,
Right.
because God is the source and foundation, as the Sheikh would explain. So he explained so well, the source and foundation of everything.
Right.
Nothing came into existence without God. So my most basic hunger, you know, I even when you think of the relationship of a mother and her child, when that child is taken away from the mother's arms, the first thing that baby will do is cry for them. The hunger is there. The baby will cry because there's a fundamental hunger for the relationship with the mother.
And
Okay.
let me say, since I'm the only one on the screen who has actually participated in this,
Yes, I get
how
it.
the baby finds the baby's self
Yeah,
is by feeding from the mother,
that's
by
right.
being nourished from
That's right.
the mother.
That's right. That's right.
And that, so it does, so our understanding of our relationship with God, oh, good, I can get into the feminism part. So wait,
I knew you were going to go there.
you knew I was going to get
I
here.
knew you were going to get there.
So here's the thing, though. Our basic understanding of God has to come from within us, because our minds are the only ones we have to grapple with these things. And I'm not pretending it's the only way to understand God.
Right.
I'm saying it's the way I can understand God, is that God nourishes me. Well, my experience of nourishment was that I was nourished at my mother's breast, and I nourished my children at my breast. That's how I understand basic nourishment. I mean, there's whole food and food science and all of that, right? So there is an aspect, a motherly aspect of God that is part of who God is. I don't know what all of God is, but this is a part of God that I have my human understanding of. And when God is absent, I feel like I'm starving.
Mm.
Right. And so, and that's why that I think, I can't really say why Islam does what Islam does. I can learn from you, Yawar, and I'm grateful to. But I think we do understand presence in juxtaposition to absence. So if we are fasting for a spiritual purpose, if we're fasting to get closer to God, we can say, well, I feel empty inside. What will fill that emptiness? God can fill that emptiness. And a baby
Absolutely.
cries and gets fed. So from our first moments, we understand that there is something that will fill our emptiness.
It's interesting that you use the, we're using the image of mother, and in the Hebrew scriptures, especially in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, I believe, God, Allah, is described as a mother. Can a child be without the tenderness of the mother, even if that mother forgets? God says, I will never forget you. But that child of the womb in that Isaiah passage, the word for womb is translated in the Arabic that I just heard from Sheikh Yawar was Rahmin, which means compassion.
Yes.
So the actual word, the literal word for compassion, is a mother's womb. All right, interesting.
The other to build on what Mother Nancy said, and let me go a little bit back to what Father Warren said as far as the relationship with neighbors is concerned. Ramadan is very much about that, as you all know. And that's not only the iftar parties, it's a whole focus on charity. I mean, charity in Islam is one of the pillars of Islam. It's part of our creed itself, which is zakat. But more than that is the charity that's specially done in Ramadan, and neighbors, and that's not only Muslims, anybody are very much a part of that focus. So feeding the poor, clothing them, shelters, all of this is very much a part of the Ramadan tradition. Second thing also is that fasting is not only about not eating, not drinking, and so on. Fasting is also about fasting from all negativity of any kind. And that's not only in Ramadan, but that's why I keep calling Ramadan a boot camp, which is to change yourself for the rest of your life. To the extent there is a hadith, there is a statement of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that if you cannot control your tongue, God has no need for you to stay away from food and water and so on. He said, if you cannot control your tongue, then Allah does not need your hunger and thirst. So he said the thing is to control your tongue. So no profanity, no cursing, no backbiting, no slandering, none of that stuff. And that's not only in Ramadan. It's not as if after Ramadan you can go ahead and do that. The thing is to bring this habit change, which will become permanent. And if you do something for 30 days, then the hope is that it becomes permanent. And therefore you become hopefully a better human being with a cleaner tongue, so to speak, and much better in relating and being together with neighbors. To come to what Mother Nancy was saying with regard to the nourishing aspect of it, as Father Warren and Mother Nancy and Bob, I'm sure you know this, the word Rabb, Rabbul Alameen, is one of the attributes of Allah, which again is, in my view, wrongly translated as Lord. Because the word Rabb in Arabic is a lot more than Lord. Usually Lord means somebody who has supreme authority, right? Not necessarily used in a nurturing way. You and I know authority is not always used in a nurturing way. But in this case, the word Rabb in Arabic actually means somebody who takes something from a state of incompleteness through successive stages to a state of perfection, right? So to take something from, if we say shay nakhis ko batadrij kamal ko pahunchaye, something which is nakhis, which is incomplete, by stages to a stage of completeness. Now that is nurturing and that is nourishment. And interestingly, the word always used in the Quran is Rabbul Alameen, not Rabbul Muslimin. It's not the nurturing, the nourisher, protector, provider of Muslims. No, the nourisher, protector, provider of the worlds. So all people, all animals, all birds, all insects, all fish, all, everything we know and everything we don't know, who is the one who nourishes them, who takes them from a state of incompleteness to a stage of perfection, and that is Allah.
Wow.
This is the nourishing aspect of it. Thank you so much, Nancy, for pointing that out. Very nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think that what I'd like to do right now is just take a short break so folks can grab a cup of coffee or whatever, and we'll be right back with this great discussion on Around a Common Table. You're listening to watching WCPC and WSKB 89.5 FM in Westfield, Massachusetts. My name is Bob Plass, and we will be right back.
Every day,
millions of people are connecting.
And even though we're overcoming obstacles,
watching each other's backs,
and banding together,
we should still make an effort.
to get to know each other
on a deeper level.
Father,
cosplayer,
mentor,
actor.
It's time we take a step forward.
It's time we take a step forward.
Come together
and discover
how accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
And now we've returned, and I really am thrilled to be having this conversation with our dear friends, Father Warren Savage, Mother Nancy Webb Stroud, and Sheikh Mirza Yawwa Beg. And we really have been talking today about Ramadan and how Ramadan relates to our lives. I wanted to ask some specifics around the fasting. Are you? I was sitting here and you were talking, and all of a sudden during your speech, Sheikh, I took a drink of water, and then I was sitting here and I was thinking, am I doing something that I shouldn't in front of a person who is fasting? And you know, in terms of relationships, I always think it's good. How do you like to be called? What are our boundaries? What are our things that are important for somebody who is not of the Muslim faith to know? And I wondered about the water, as I have it right here. So tell me.
Now that's a wonderful question. Let me tell you a little story. When I was about 15 or so, I was studying Urdu language and literature. And my teacher was a great scholar of Urdu and Farsi, or Persian. And he was a Hindu. So Rai Mahbub Narayan in Hyderabad. Now, our normal tradition class my class would be for 2 hours. And we would have a break in the middle of that class, and both of us would have tea. And tea and one Mari biscuit. So we call it biscuit, the cookies. So the tea would come and both of us would drink, and then the class would continue. Now come Ramadan, so I landed up, it was in his house, so I landed up in his house. And after that first part, he said to me, if you permit me, I will be back in a little while. And he was about 70 and I was 15. So this is also the question of what we call akhlaq in Arabic, manners and relationships. So my teacher says to me, if you give me 5 minutes, I'll be back. He went away. Now the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the same thing happened. And imagine if you say to a 15-year-old, I'll just be back, and you go to the next room, what is that 15-year-old going to do? He's going to look through the keyhole. And I did. And what did I see? I saw him having his tea. Now, he could have had his tea in front of me. I was not objecting to that. And you will never find a Muslim saying, no, Bob, you know what, you can't drink because I'm fasting. No, nobody's going to say that. But the consideration for somebody else, and thank you very much. You are the one who brought this up, Bob.
Yeah.
The consideration for somebody else who's fasting would be that you would not eat or drink in front of that person. Or if you needed to do that, you would, as a courtesy, say, do you mind if I do this? Right? And obviously they would say no. I mean, they wouldn't mind. And in any case, there is no compulsion. I mean, if you did eat or drink, you're not committing a crime. But as a matter of respect, as a matter of consideration for each other, you would say, well, if you are fasting, then either I would not eat or drink in front of you, or if I wanted to do that, I would seek permission. So I think that's
very important. I wonder also, when you're wanting to wish your Muslim friends a happy Ramadan, is there a proper and or a phrase that we could use that would say, I respect your faith, and I'm wondering, is it Happy Ramadan? What do you say?
You could definitely say Happy Ramadan. Absolutely, that would be correct, and there's no problem with that. But if you wanted to use some Arabic, you could say Ramadan Mubarak. So
Ramadan Mubarak.
Mubarak, or you could say Ramadan Kareem. So
Ramadan Kareem, Ramadan
Kareem.
Mubarak.
Yeah, Ramadan Kareem or Ramadan Mubarak.
What does that mean?
Would say Happy Ramadan. But Ramadan Mubarak means may you have a blessed Ramadan. And Kareem again means the same thing. So it's a greeting as well as an invocation kind of thing. You're wishing well for them. So you say Ramadan Mubarak, you say may you have a Ramadan which is full of barakah, which is full of goodness, which is full of blessing for you.
So Bob, I just want to interrupt here, because if you received the campus ministry bulletin this week,
I did.
there was a picture. It was a photo that Sheikh Yawar Big gave us And in the upper right-hand corner of that picture was these words, Ramadan Kareem. So the greeting was see, what I love about our show is that this show basically points out humanity's failure to be aware of what's in front of him or her. Our basic problem is we're not aware.
Yeah.
And all wisdom begins with awareness. So when I'm not aware of God, not aware of my neighbor, what's going to happen is fundamental disrespect, all these things that have nothing to do with love and compassion. Yes, there it is. Yeah, so there it is.
Ah, there you go. That's the picture. That's the picture.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
picture.
look at
I said that this is my.
Look at. I
this is
took the
black
photo.
captivity hanging upside down
That's
to make
right.
sense of our upside down world.
There it is.
Oh, wow.
So that big picture was right on the front cover of the bulletin.
Yes, I saw that.
that expressed the essence of Ramadan.
Well, we all, including myself, need to be connected to the ministry
but I'm
at
just trying
Westfield
to-
State. How do I get this bulletin if I'm
but-
not Bob Plass?
No, I send it to you. You get it.
You send it, but I mean, like, folks listening, would they be able
Yeah,
to?
but what I'm
receive-
expecting you to do is to at least look at the picture, take it in, and tell people about it. So that's the problem. We're not making the connections. Even when we have the information, we don't make the connections.
No,
What I
no.
find fascinating is that Sheikh gives a great explanation of Ramadan. We have great explanations of Lent and Easter, and we all come from these traditions. Why is the world still screwed up then? With all these wonderful teachings, with all these beautiful things, the world should not look like the way it is, and we should not be chaotic and disconnected and conflicted in war and violence. So something's missing. Something's missing. Even the great traditions have failed in their capacity to transform and change the world. Because even the Christians don't believe the stuff we teach them. Even our own people don't take to heart the teachings that are so fundamental to the holding of humanity together. I'm just telling you the truth. The more we teach it, the more celebrations we have, the farther away we are from God and from one another. Something's wrong. Something's wrong.
Is there a message?
And I love listening to the Sheikh. And I love what Mother Nancy has to say is right on target. It's what I try to write. But it seems that the world doesn't quite get it. Humanity as we enter the 21st century, you would think that we have evolved, that our consciousness has evolved to a point where we are in fact more loving, more compassionate, more benevolent.
Perhaps, well, there may be something to be said for the fact that we have everything handed to us, and oftentimes we're fearful of difference. We are afraid to even confront our own bias, prejudice, whatever we call it, our own filters that make us see the world within our own eyes. I wondered, Sheikh, in Ramadan, to answer Father's question, is there a message in Ramadan for our world that is so conflicted at this moment?
I completely and totally agree with Father Warren. And I really, what he said it so correctly and he said it so powerfully. All I can say is yay, and that's right. The world, seriously, I mean, the world is seriously in a very, very bad shape. And if you look at our priorities, I don't want to be, a doomsday prophet or something, but it seriously looks to me like we are not going in any right direction. We are actually going to get worse. Anyone who thinks that this world is going to improve is really sort of deluding themselves. Now, but we need to change that. Just take the priorities. Just take like we take in Ramadan, for example, we're looking at the power of charity and so on and so forth. Simple things. I mean, I'm very sort of, within reports, addicted to data. If you look at numbers, if you just take the numbers of the spend, and I'm not even talking about countries like America, which is a wealthy country. I'm talking about poor countries. If you take India, for example, the poor nation. If you take their spend on weapons and compare that with what do they spend on education, on public health, right? Just take these two, for example, education and public health. It is multiples of that. I mean, the money they spend on weapons is many multiples of what they spend on public health and on education, right? In India, farmers have been protesting, and I'm sure you've been seeing that on the news. If you look at the international news, for months together, no change in anything. Over 300,000 farmers have committed suicide. That doesn't even make it to the newspapers. Forget about anything else. But this is our work. So obviously our priorities are way off the mark. And that is why sometimes when I see all of this, I say, that is why we have a day of judgment, because there is somebody, there's one time and one place where nobody is going to escape. I mean, you can do all the dancing you want in this world, but a day will come when you will stand before your creator and there's no one's going to help you then, when you will have to answer for what you did or you chose not to do. And that's why when sometimes people ask this question and they say, for example, they see suffering, they see a homeless person, they see a child in the street and so on, and they say, well, why doesn't God do something? And I say to them, God did something already. He created you. Right?
Oh,
you are,
Yes.
yeah. So don't tell me why doesn't God do something? He did already. He created you. He showed you what is right and wrong. He gave you the ability to help that person. Like Mother Teresa, she used to say, if you can't feed 100 people, feed one. So don't worry about, don't globalize an issue, because this is the other problem. We tend to globalize issues, which really is a cop-out strategy as far as I'm concerned, because when we globalize something, it somehow gives us a justification to say, well, what can I do? It's such a big problem. So for example, now what Father Warren said, the world is screwed up, sure. So now can I solve it as one individual? No, of course I can't. But can I be good to my neighbor? Yes, I can. Will that solve the whole world's problem? No, it won't, but it'll solve my neighbor's problem, right?
Yes.
And if that can be propagated, maybe it solves the problem of 10 people. Maybe it solves the problem of West Springfield. And I think you're doing well. I mean, God will not hold you responsible for the whole world, but he will hold you responsible for your neighbor. So look after that one first. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said that if you sleep with a full belly when your neighbor is sleeping hungry, you have no faith. And he did not say Muslim neighbor.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who the neighbor is. If your neighbor is sleeping hungry and you are sleeping with a full belly, then you have no faith. There is a beautiful story. One of our great scholars, Abdullah bin Mubarak, he was in the early century after the Prophet ﷺ, one of the greatest scholars of Islam, Abdullah bin Mubarak. He tells the story. He said that he went for Hajj and he finished the pilgrimage and so on and so forth. And at the end of all that, one day he was near the Kaaba, the Grand Mosque. He was sitting there and he fell asleep. And in a dream, he saw two angels talking to each other. And one of the angels said to the other one, he said, this year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God did not accept anybody's Hajj. So all
say that again. Say that again.
He said, this year, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God did not accept anybody's Hajj.
Their pilgrimage, Bob.
The pilgrimage, right? Hajj is
Oh,
the
Hajj, pilgrimage. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
pilgrimage.
Gotcha.
So he said, Allah did not accept anybody's Hajj. The other one said, that is true, but because of one man, he accepted everybody's Hajj. So the other one says, who's that man? He said, this man is a cobbler who lives in such and such a city in Baghdad. He said, this is a man who is a cobbler who's living in Baghdad in such and such a place. He gave him the exact location. He gave him the name of the guy. He said, this is the person. Abdullah bin Mubarak woke up. Now he did Hajj that year. He said, well, my Hajj is not accepted either. In this dream. So this is in Makkah. This dream he had in Makkah. He traveled from Makkah to Baghdad. He went to meet this cobbler. He went there, he met this cobbler, and he said to this cobbler, I want to congratulate you for your Hajj. So the man said, I didn't do Hajj. So Abdullah Mubarak said, what? You didn't go for Hajj this year? He said, no, I didn't go. So Abdullah Mubarak said, now what kind of thing is this? He said, tell me, why did you not go for Hajj? So the cobbler started weeping. He said, why are you crying? He said, I'm crying because it's so expensive to go from Baghdad to Mecca. These are the old days of the caravans and so on. You're talking about the 8th century.
Right.
So he said, I had collected money, I had saved money all my life to do Hajj one time. So he said, then what happened? Why didn't you go? He said, I didn't go because in those days, what used to happen was that before you went for Hajj, even now we do it, but those days was very real. Before you went for Hajj, you went around, you met all your relatives and so on and so forth. You told them you were going for Hajj. You sought their forgiveness if you had done anything wrong with them. Basically you wished everybody, you took farewell from everybody, then you went. This man said, I was doing that. I was going around meeting people and so on, and then I was meeting my neighbors. And he said, one of my neighbors, I went to his house and it was about evening, almost time for the evening meal. And as I knocked on the door, I could smell this beautiful aroma of roasting meat. He said, anyway, he knocked on the door, the neighbor opened the door. The man said, I'm going for Hajj and so on. I want to, if I hurt you, I want to apologize to you. I will make dua for you. I will, supplicate for you and so on and so forth. And the neighbor said, well, thank you very much and so on. So as he was leaving, jokingly, he said to the neighbor, it's strange. I come to your house at meal time. I can smell this beautiful aroma of roasting meat and you're not inviting me to have a meal with you. Because this would be the normal thing to do. Come eat with us. He said, you're not saying that. And the neighbor started crying. This man said, I'm sorry, I hurt you. Why are you crying? He said, I'm crying because what is cooking in my house is not halal for you. You can't eat that. He said, why can't I eat that? He said, you are also a Muslim. I'm also a Muslim. What is halal for you is halal for you. Why can't you eat that? He said, because what I'm eating is dead meat. And the reason it is dead meat is because he said, we have been hungry. My whole family has been starving for 4 or 5 days. It got to a point where, people are almost like they're dead. He said, I went around, I found a dead sheep. So I cut some meat out of that dead sheep and we are cooking that. Now for us, it is okay because we have been starving. So the rules of halal and haram are no longer valid for us. But for you, that I can't give you that food. So I'm extremely sorry. I apologize. This cobbler then went home. He took all the money which he had collected to make Hajj for the pilgrimage. He brought it and gave it to his neighbor. And he said, this you keep. This is for you, my gift to you. And he did not go for the pilgrimage. So he said to Abdullah Mubarak, he said, I could not go for the pilgrimage, even though I saved up all my life. And I probably now cannot go ever because, I am now whatever age I am and, not enough time. So, but I just could not go for pilgrimage while my neighbor was in the state. So I gave him the money. Abdullah bin Mubarak said to him, let me give you the bashara, let me give you the good news that not only did Allah accept your pilgrimage, even though you did not do it, but because of you, He accepted the pilgrimage of everybody who went there. Now that is the issue of neighbors and of the question of compassion, the question of we were talking about how the world is so screwed up, is because we don't practice this anymore. I talk and may Allah protect me from myself. I always make this dua, may Allah protect me from myself. Because I don't want Allah to hold me accountable and say, you used to say all of this, but you're doing it. So this is very, very important. It's not a question of what you say, it's a question of what you actually practice. And this is the whole thing. The whole thing is the world is in this mess because we know all the stuff, right? We know all the stuff. If we sit for a theology exam, I'm sure all of us will pass. The point is, do we actually practice what we preach? And I'm talking for myself, not for my
yeah. We are coming to the
what I heard was see, the pilgrimage is not the most important in the eyes of Allah.
No.
What is supreme in the eyes of God is love of God and love of neighbor. It comes back to this point.
Yep.
And I don't think you need to have a religious tradition to know the power of love. If you have a religious tradition, it's supposed to teach you and
The power of
emphasize
love.
this basic human instinct or capacity to love. So
Yeah.
there are people who have no religious tradition who are in fact loving their neighbor and doing exactly what Allah or God or Yahweh would ask you to do. See, what I feel, this is just my own personal kind of insight after 42 years of preaching and teaching. Basically, our people are too busy trying to be Christian at the expense of not being human. They think it's far more important to be Christian than it is to be human. When in fact, to be Christian has nothing to do with being Christian. It's about becoming a more perfected human being.
Amen.
That's it. So
Yep.
we spend more time trying to make Muslims and Christians and Jews at the expense of losing humanity. The most fundamental thing God wants us to be. Why did, from the Christian tradition, God became human to teach us how to be a better human being. And the teachings of Muhammad, peace be upon him, is to teach us how to be a more basic human being who's created in the image and likeness of God. I mean, it just baffles me that we are trying to be better Muslims and better Christians and better Jews or better Hindus, but we're not better human beings. There's something fundamentally wrong with this whole process.
Mother Nancy,
I think
Yeah, I'm agreeing with my colleagues 100%. One of the things that has irritated me, I guess I'll say, during the pandemic is that people have said the church is closed. When is the church going to open?
I know what you're going to say. I know.
oh yeah. Yeah.
And just in my own congregation, my people within 2 weeks of the shutdown said, I always bring food for the food pantry when I come to church in the building. How do I do that now? And they immediately found a place at the Church of the Atonement where they could put food for neighbors to come take. And then we got another station and we have a little free food pantry. And there are a group of people from my church who are filling that food pantry every day. All you have to do is stop by the church and find the little free food pantry and take what you need. And we have been doing this now for over a year. It's an absolutely wonderful thing. And those same people will look at me and say, why is the church closed?
Oh.
And I'm like, no, the church is not closed. Look at what you're doing. You're doing the church. You're being who God is calling you to be.
You're right. And we advertise that in our in the bulletin.
And thank you for that.
We do every week.
And it's well utilized, you know. And so we will have some in-person worship this week, and that along social distancing guidelines and blah blah blah. And that's great. And I'm glad we're doing it, and I'll be there. But the church has been open all along. And most churches and mosques and synagogues have been open throughout the pandemic, doing what they can do to help our neighbors.
yes.
That's exactly right.
Right.
So
I mean, throughout Ramadan, we have a program where every day we give iftar to whoever wants it, whoever needs it, and there's no religious bar on that. We also give boxes of food, which is good for a whole month to anyone who wants it. We raised for the pantry for here in West Springfield. We had we call it the hunger walk, and we raised $5,000, and we gave $5,000 to them. That again is not Muslim specific. You know, Mother Nancy, absolutely, you're quite right. I think I always say this about Islam, and I think this is probably true for all religious faiths. I say Islam is the name of a practice. It is not the name of a philosophy. It's like judo, right? If I tell you that I know all about judo, and I've memorized all the judo books that have ever been written, and I can tell you the whole genealogy from where it started and so on and so on. And then I step out of my office, and some guy tackles me on the street, and I'm flat on my back, and you say, well, I thought you know judo. Well, you know what? I know about judo. I don't know judo.
Right.
Because judo is the name of a practice. How do you know judo? You know judo by practicing judo, by going to the dojo and falling down 10,000 times. And that's how you learn how to do judo. And like what Father Warren said very, very clearly, you're too busy becoming, more Muslim, not better Muslim, more Christian, more Jewish, more whatever. And we have equated knowledge as information.
Yes.
I always differentiate. Knowledge is not what we call knowledge. Most of the time is only information. It's not knowledge, because knowledge is that information which you learn, which you need, then practiced, internalized, experienced, and what comes out of that becomes knowledge. So it's not just a matter of saying, like take fasting, for example, since we are talking about Ramadan, take fasting, for example. Everybody knows, okay, Muslims fast. So this is fast. Now, do you know about fasting? Yeah, sure, and I know about fasting. This is what breaks the fast and so on and so on. Did you ever fast? No. So do you have knowledge of fasting? No. You have information about fasting. Now, there is a world of difference. Do you know about God? Yes. Do you know God? And there is a world of difference.
Yes.
Right? I know about God. I can explain to you all the attributes and this and this and this and he's this and he's this. All right, so good. Now, so raise your hand, ask for what you want, and you say he is listening to you, let him give it to you. Is that a test that I'm willing to do? I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm saying that as a Muslim, I need to ask myself this question, that if I'm saying I have a direct connection between God and man, and he is listening, he understands, and so on and so forth, no matter which language I speak, all languages are from him. So if I ask him, he's listening to me, he can give. So if you challenge me and say, ask and show me, what do I do? I will ask, and I know, and I have every faith and every hope that he will show. But the point is that in my heart, not only because you challenge me, but because am I doing that when I'm worshiping? Am I worshiping like I am talking to somebody, like I know the one I'm talking to?
I teach a course to aspirants and candidates called homiletics preaching, and 2 weeks ago, one of the candidates was giving a homily on this universal love of God. That was his theme. So I said to him, "You cannot step into the pulpit. You cannot step into that preaching place if you have not had an experience of God's love yourself." Because what the people want to know is, have you had the experience? They don't want to just know that they're supposed to love God. They want to know, have you had an experience of God's love in your life? And from that experience is what you preach. And he looked at me and I said, well, have you had an experience? But the guy is 50-something years old, and he couldn't tell me whether or not he had an experience of God's love. I said, well, you need to think about getting ordained, because you cannot be a credible preacher, a credible witness of God's love if you have not had an experience. I'm telling you, do not go in front of your bishop and get ordained if you cannot explain from a personal experience of God's love what that's all about. He looked at me and he says, oh my God, Father. I said, so you've been a Catholic Christian all your life, but you cannot identify a moment in your, I'm telling you, this is critical. This is scary stuff.
Absolutely critical.
All right. Yeah. So I said, if you haven't experienced God's compassion, God's peace, God's forgiveness, what in God's name are you doing in the pulpit?
Yeah.
Why would you want to go into the pulpit to tell the people something you don't even know, or as the Sheikh just explained, I cannot talk about anything if I haven't had the experience of it.
Yeah.
Has anyone in this conversation had pancreatitis or cried pancreatitis? Probably not, but I have.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the hell it was about until I had the experience. So it's a whole different reality. So we have to know that life is not, I'm going to go back to what the Sheikh said. We have a bunch of information out there, but what life really needs is experiential knowledge.
Yeah.
Not of just, yuck and duck muck. We need experience knowledge of love and compassion and peace and goodness and kindness. Even as we began this conversation, the Sheikh said he loved your question because it came from a place of respect and concern.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So that's fundamental. Every religious tradition, it teaches us something about respect and reverence for God, for each other, for life.
Yeah.
But my point is, after all this information, all this preaching through all our mosques and synagogues and Christian churches, why is it that world doesn't look like anything we've been talking about?
Yeah. That statement, that the difference between knowledge and information,
Yeah.
and that active practice, I guess that's redundant, but the practice of what we learn. And we've gone a little bit over time today, and we've got so much more to talk about. So much more, so much important stuff that is information. We want folks out there to take what we learn, what you learn here, and put it into action. And I can't thank you three wonderful clergy enough. I'm blessed every time we get together, and I look forward to our next around the table, because the conversation is always similar in its way. That there are similarities and touchstones and linchpins of all faiths that we can put into action. And if we can inspire by just talking, honestly, I think we're doing that's
I'm
good.
going to tell my people next year to skip Lent and just practice Ramadan.
Oh, wouldn't that be? Oh,
yeah, I'm going to tell them, let's skip this 40 days and let's wait until whatever the next lunar schedule says Ramadan is.
Yeah,
I'd rather let's do Ramadan.
I would love to practice something like that and experience what it's like.
Exactly.
It would be, it's a really important thing.
Let's
Sheikh, would you just say a short prayer for us as we end our program? And then we will look forward to everybody next time joining us for Around the Common Table. We love having you here. Sheikh, why don't you take us out with a lovely prayer? And incidentally, Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. I will do the prayer in Arabic and then I will translate.
Yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. I begin in the name of Allah, who is the most beneficent and the most merciful. O our Rabb, O our nourisher, protector, O our creator, O our helper in every single way, usually translated as Lord, Rabb, Rabbana, O our Rabb, Atina fid dunya hasana. Please give us all that is good in this world. Wa fil akhirati hasana. And all that is good in the hereafter. Waqina adhaban nar, and save us from the punishment of the hellfire. This is my prayer for all of us and for all the viewers. And I thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about Ramadan, to talk about Allah, to talk about the commonalities of our faiths and our commonalities as human beings. And which cuts through all boundaries and should cut through all boundaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys, and see you next time.
Beautiful,
on Around the Common Table.
Yeah, the best meal today is right here.
Yes.